The great chamber of the Galactic Concord Council was built from white stone that glowed faintly under soft light. Hundreds of delegates from many different star systems sat in curved rows that rose toward the high ceiling. Some had scales, some had fur, some had many eyes, and some looked almost human but were not. Today, they had all come together to vote on one simple matter. The matter was about human ships. At the center of the chamber stood a tall alien named Director Senek Varel. He was from the Sonari species, a race known for their brilliant engineers and their new invention, the Zenithian drive. This drive could move a starship faster than anything built before. It could also power weapons that made older guns look like toys. The Sonari had shared this new technology with the Concord, and every major fleet was now upgrading their ships. Every fleet, that is, except one. Honored delegates, Director Varel said, his voice calm and steady. We have studied the reports carefully. Terran battleships, built using old Concord standards from 20 years ago, can no longer keep pace with modern fleets. Their engines are too slow. Their shields are too weak. Their weapons take too long to reload. We move today to formally declare all Terran-class battleships obsolete, effective within the standard cycle. A murmur rolled through the chamber. Not everyone agreed, but no one stood to argue very hard. Humanity was still a young member of the Concord, having joined only 30 years ago after the First Contact War ended, in an uneasy peace. Many species still saw humans as clever but primitive, good at surviving, but not good at building the newest things. In the human delegate's seat, Ambassador Rosalind Chen kept her face calm, though her hands were folded tightly in her lap. She had expected this vote. She had fought against it for months, but the numbers did not lie. Human ships were, on paper, slower and weaker than the new Concord standard. All those in favor, Director Varel said. Hands rose. Lights blinked. Screens filled with green checkmarks from every delegation except one. The motion passes, Varel announced. Terran battleships will be retired from active Concord service. Replacement vessels using Zenithian technology will be provided to the Terran Federation at a reduced cost, as a gesture of goodwill. Ambassador Chen stood slowly. Director Varel, may I speak? You may. Humanity built its ships with what we had. We did not have the luxury of borrowed engines from the Sonari, or shields copied from the Vossiskar Empire. We built with our own hands, our own steel, our own mistakes, and our own lessons. I ask the Council this. Has any Terran ship actually failed in Concord service? Has one single Terran battleship lost a real battle since we joined this council? The chamber went quiet. No one answered right away, because the truth was that no Terran ship had lost a major battle. They had simply become old on paper, outmatched by numbers on a chart, even though they had never actually been tested against real danger since the new drives arrived. The vote has already passed, Ambassador, Director Varel said gently. This is not a matter of past performance. It is a matter of the future. We must move forward together with the best technology available to all of us. Chen sat back down. She knew there was nothing more to say in this room, but she also knew something the Council did not seem to care about. There was one ship, far out on the edge of Concord space, that had not yet received the news. And that ship was about to prove that old steel could still hold a line no new engine could reach. Far away, past the bright core worlds and the busy trade lanes, past even the quiet farming colonies of the mid-rim, there was a patch of space called the Rimward Drift. It was a lonely place, full of drifting rocks, dead stars, and old mining outposts that no one important ever visited. Out here, on constant slow patrol, was the TFS Valkyrie's Wrath, a Terran Federation battleship that had served the Concord for 19 years. The Valkyrie's Wrath was not beautiful. Its gray hull was scarred from small meteor strikes and years of hard use. Its engines rumbled instead of hummed, and its old cannons had to be manually aimed by a gunner instead of an automatic targeting system. But every person aboard knew this ship the way a farmer knows the shape of his own hands. They knew where it creaked before a storm of space dust. They knew which corridor got cold in the third watch. They knew this ship would not let them down, because it never had. Captain Elena Voss stood on the bridge, looking at the slow blinking stars on the main view screen. She was 44 years old, with short gray-streaked hair, and eyes that had seen more than her share of hard nights. She had commanded the Valkyrie's Wrath for 6 years, and before that, she had served as its first officer for 4 more. This ship was more than metal to her. It was home. "Report," she said quietly. Commander Marcus Reyes, her second in command, walked up beside her with a datapad in hand. He was younger than the captain, with a strong jaw and a habit of chewing the inside of his cheek when he was thinking hard. "Nothing new on long-range scanners, Captain. Same quiet sector we've had for the last 3 months. Chief Okafor says Engine 4 is running a little hot, but nothing to worry about yet." "Good," Voss said. "Keep an eye on it anyway." At that moment, a soft chime rang from the communications station. Lieutenant Priya Sharma, the young communications officer, sat up straighter. "Captain, we're receiving a priority message. It's from Concord Fleet Command, direct from headquarters." Voss frowned slightly. Messages from Fleet Command rarely came out this far, and never with a priority tag. "Put it through." The screen flickered, and the face of Fleet Admiral Torin Vex appeared. He was an older Vossiscar male, with pale blue skin and deep lines across his forehead. He had worked with humans for years, and was known to respect them more than most, but even his tone today sounded careful, almost sad. "Captain Voss," Admiral Vex began, "I have an official notice from the Concord Council. As of this cycle, all Terran-class battleships have been declared obsolete by Council vote. The Valkyrie's Wrath, along with every other Terran ship in active service, is scheduled for decommission within the standard cycle." The bridge went silent. Even the low hum of the engines seemed to fade into the background. "Decommission, sir?" Voss asked, keeping her voice level, though her stomach had gone tight. "I fought against this, Captain. Believe me, I did. But the vote passed. Newer ships with Zenithian drives are being built to replace the Terran fleet. In the meantime, you and your crew are being reassigned to a low-priority patrol route until your replacement arrives. It is, I am sorry to say, a face-saving assignment, nothing more." Commander Reyes clenched his jaw but said nothing. Beside the navigation console, young pilot Lieutenant Tomas Illich looked over at the captain with wide eyes. Chief Engineer Amara Okafor, who had just walked onto the bridge to report on the engines, stopped in the doorway and crossed her arms. "Where exactly are we being sent, Admiral?" Voss asked. "The far edge of the rimward drift, Sector K-19. It is little more than a stretch of empty rock and a few old mining stations. No Concord fleet has bothered to patrol it in years, because there is nothing there worth guarding. You will hold position, monitor for distress signals, and wait for your replacement vessel." Voss took a slow breath. "Understood, Admiral. The Valkyrie's Wrath will hold position at Sector K-19. "I am sorry, Captain," Vex said again, and this time his voice did carry real feeling. "Your ship and your crew have served the Concord honorably. I want you to know that not everyone on this council agrees with what has been done today." The transmission ended, and the bridge lights seemed dimmer than before. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Commander Reyes broke the silence. "Obsolete," he muttered, "after everything this ship has done." "It's not personal, Marcus," Voss said, though her own voice had a hard edge now. "It's numbers on a chart. Faster engines, bigger guns. That's all they see." Chief Okafor stepped further onto the bridge, her engineer's jumpsuit still stained with grease from her last inspection. "With respect, Captain, this ship has never lost a fight. Not once. Numbers on a chart don't win battles. People do. Try telling that to the council," Reyes said bitterly. Voss looked around at her crew. She saw the anger in their faces, but she also saw something else, something steadier. Pride. This crew had trained together, bled together, and trusted each other with their lives, more times than any of them could count. A vote in a marble chamber light years away could call their ship obsolete, but it could not erase what they had built together. "Set a course for Sector K-19, Voss said finally. "If Fleet Command wants to put us out to pasture, we'll do it the way we do everything else. Properly, and with our heads held high." "Aye, Captain," Illich said quietly, turning back to his console. As the Valkyrie's Wrath adjusted its course and began the slow journey toward the far edge of the rimward drift, the mood aboard the ship grew heavy. In the mess hall, crew members spoke in low voices, some angry, some sad, some simply tired. A ship that had crossed dangerous space, fought off pirates, and rescued stranded colonists was being sent to sit quietly in an empty sector and wait to be replaced. Down in the engineering bay, Chief Okafor ran her hand along one of the old engine housings, feeling the familiar hum beneath her palm. She had built half of these repairs herself, patched wiring with her own 2 hands during long nights, when no other engineer would have dared trust the old systems. To her, this ship was not obsolete. It was proven. On the bridge, Voss remained at her station long after her shift should have ended, staring at the stars. She thought of all the crews before hers who had served on this ship, all the missions completed, all the lives saved. Now the Concorde wanted to trade it in for something shinier. There was one person aboard the Valkyrie's Wrath who saw things a little differently, though he had not yet said much. His name was Zeth Khan, a Sonari engineer, who had been assigned to the ship 6 months earlier as a Concorde observer, meant to study Terran engineering methods for future reports. Zeth was young for a Sonari, with pale golden skin and calm, careful eyes. He had grown up hearing that human technology was crude and outdated, yet in his time aboard the Valkyrie's Wrath, he had seen something that surprised him. He had seen a crew that fixed problems not with perfect machines, but with clever thinking and hard work. He had seen loyalty that went beyond duty. That night, as most of the crew tried to rest, Zeth found Chief Okafor still working in the engineering bay, tightening a bolt on the aging power core. "You should be sleeping," Zeth said, stepping closer. Okafor did not look up. "So should you." "I could not sleep. I keep thinking about the Council's decision." He paused. "May I ask you something honest, Chief Engineer?" "Go ahead." "Do you believe this ship is truly obsolete?" Okafor set down her tool and finally looked at him. "Let me ask you something honest too, Zeth. In 6 months on this ship, have you ever seen us fail to complete a mission?" "No," he admitted. "Have you ever seen this crew fail to solve a problem, even when the ship itself was falling apart around us?" "No," he said again, quieter this time. "Then you already know the answer," Okafor said. The Council looked at a chart. "They didn't look at us." Zeth was silent for a long moment, turning her words over in his mind. Back home, everyone spoke of the Zenithian drive as the greatest invention in a generation, a symbol of progress that made every old ship worthless by comparison. But numbers on a chart could not measure courage, and they could not measure the strange, stubborn spirit that seemed to live inside every corner of this old gray battleship. "Perhaps," Zeth said slowly, "the Council has made a mistake." Okafor allowed herself a small, tired smile. "Wouldn't be the first time." 3 days later, the Valkyrie's Wrath arrived at Sector K-19. It was exactly as Admiral Vex had described, an empty stretch of drifting rock and dark space, dotted with a few small mining stations that barely showed up on the long-range sensors. The crew settled into a slow, quiet routine, running patrols that led nowhere, checking systems that had nothing new to report, and waiting for word of their replacement. Captain Voss tried to keep morale steady, running drills to keep the crew sharp even though there seemed to be nothing out here that needed sharpness. Commander Reyes grumbled more than usual, frustrated at being parked in what he called the galaxy's forgotten closet. Lieutenant Sharma kept a careful watch on the communication channels, though days passed with nothing but routine traffic from the small mining outposts, scattered across the sector. On the 5th day, everything changed. It happened during the ship's 3rd watch, when most of the crew was resting, and only a skeleton team held the bridge. Lieutenant Sharma was monitoring the comm channels when a signal broke through the static, weak and broken, but unmistakable. "This is Kepler Mining Station 9, the voice said, crackling with fear. "We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. Unknown ships, heavy weapons fire, we have casualties. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help. We need..." The signal cut off entirely. Sharma's hands moved fast over her console, her heart pounding. "Captain, emergency distress call. Kepler Mining Station 9, 40 minutes from our position at current speed. They report attack by unknown hostile ships." Captain Voss, who had been resting in her quarters, was on the bridge within 2 minutes, still pulling on her uniform jacket. "Confirm the signal, Lieutenant." "Confirmed, Captain. It cut off mid-transmission. Could mean their communications array was destroyed. Or..." Sharma did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Voss's jaw tightened. 40 minutes was a long time for people under attack. But the Valkyrie's Wrath was the only Concorde ship anywhere near Sector K-19, and if they did not respond, No one would. "Commander Reyes to the bridge," she called over the ship's comm system. "All hands to battle stations. Chief Okafor, I need every bit of speed those old engines can give us. Helm, plot the fastest course to Kepler 9 and take us there now." Lieutenant Illick's hands flew across the controls. "Course laid in, Captain. Engaging engines." The old ship groaned as it turned hard and surged forward, its engines burning brighter than they had in months. Alarms began to sound softly throughout the corridors as the crew rushed to their stations, pulling on gear, checking weapons, preparing for a fight that had come out of nowhere, in a sector everyone believed was quiet and forgotten. On the bridge, Captain Voss stood tall, watching the stars streak past on the view screen as the Valkyrie's wrath raced toward danger. Whatever the Council believed about this ship, whatever numbers sat on their charts back in the marble halls of the Concord capital, none of that mattered now. Somewhere ahead, people were in trouble, and this old battleship, declared obsolete only days ago, was the only hope they had. 40 minutes, Captain," Reyes said, arriving on the bridge and taking his station. "Can we make it faster?" Voss looked at the burning stars ahead. "We're going to try." Behind her, Chief Okafor's voice came over the comm from engineering, tight with effort. "Captain, I'm pushing everything I can into those engines. We might just surprise a few people today." Voss allowed herself the smallest hint of a smile. "Let's hope so, Chief." "Let's hope so." Down in engineering, Amara Okafor moved between the humming coils and glowing power lines with the calm speed of someone who had done this 100 times before. Sweat gathered on her brow as she rerouted power from the ship's secondary systems into the main drive. The old engine core groaned under the strain, but it held, just as it always had. She patted the metal casing gently, the way someone might pat a tired old dog, before asking it to run one more race. "Come on, old girl," she muttered. "One more time. Show them what real engineering looks like." Zeth Khan stood nearby, watching her work with quiet fascination. He had studied engine schematics his whole life, learned the elegant mathematics of the Zenithian drive, and yet here was a woman coaxing extra speed out of a system that, by every modern standard, should not have been able to give any more. And somehow, it was working. "This should not be possible," Zeth said, almost to himself. "The stress tolerances on this core were rated far below what you are currently pushing through it." "Ratings are what someone writes down before they've actually tried something," Okafor said without looking up. "Out here, we find out what things can really do." Zeth said nothing more, but he found himself hoping, in a way that surprised him, that the old ship would hold together long enough to matter. On the bridge, the tension grew thicker with every passing minute. Lieutenant Sharma tried again and again to reach Kepler Mining Station 9, but only static answered her calls. Commander Reyes paced quietly behind the command chair, his eyes fixed on the countdown displayed on the main screen. Captain Voss stood still, her hands clasped behind her back, though anyone who looked closely could see the tightness in her shoulders. 15 minutes out, Illick reported. "Any word from other Concord ships in the area?" Voss asked. "I checked, Captain," Sharma answered. "There's a Voss's car cruiser 3 sectors away, but even at their top speed, they won't reach Kepler 9 for at least 2 hours. We're the only ones close enough to help." Reyes exhaled slowly. "Then it's on us." "It's always been on us," Voss said quietly. "That's what this ship does." As the Valkyrie's wrath raced onward, the crew prepared as best they could. Weapons Officer Lieutenant Sarah Kim ran through her targeting systems one final time, double-checking every cannon and every missile bay by hand, the way she had been trained years ago before automatic systems became common in newer fleets. She trusted her own eyes and her own instincts more than any computer, and today, that training would matter more than ever. In the corridors, medical teams moved quickly, setting up emergency stations in case survivors needed care. Dr. Naomi Wells, the ship's chief medical officer, checked her supplies twice, then a third time, her mind already imagining the kind of injuries a mining station under attack might produce. She had served on this ship for 8 years, and had treated everything from small cuts to devastating wounds, but she never let herself grow used to the fear that came before a crisis. 10 minutes, Illick called out. Captain Voss took her seat in the command chair for the first time since the alert began. She looked around at her crew, faces tense but steady, hands ready at their stations. This was not a crew that panicked. This was a crew that had trained for exactly this kind of moment, over and over, for years. "Listen to me," Voss said, her voice carrying across the bridge. "The Concord Council may have decided our ship is obsolete. They may believe that newer engines and shinier weapons make us less important than we once were. But out here, right now, none of that matters. What matters is that there are people on that mining station who need our help, and we are the ones close enough to give it. Let's show them exactly what this old ship can still do." A quiet murmur of agreement passed across the bridge. Reyes straightened his shoulders. Sharma's hands steadied on her console. Even Zeth Khan, who had entered the bridge moments earlier to observe, felt something shift inside him, a growing respect for a crew that refused to be defined by a vote in a distant council chamber. 5 minutes, Illich said. "I'm picking up energy readings near Kepler 9 now. Multiple unknown contacts. It looks bad, Captain." Voss leaned forward slightly. "Give me visual, as soon as we're in range." "Aye, Captain." The stars ahead blurred and stretched as the Valkyrie's Wrath pushed its engines to their absolute limit, racing through the dark toward a battle that no one back at Concord headquarters knew was happening. Whatever waited for them at Kepler 9, this crew, aboard this so-called obsolete ship, was ready to meet it head-on. The countdown continued. 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1. And then, on the main view screen, the mining station came into view, along with the ships attacking it, and Captain Elena Voss understood that the fight for Kepler Mining Station 9 was only the very beginning of something much larger than anyone aboard the Valkyrie's Wrath could yet imagine. The mining station hung against the darkness like a wounded animal, one side of its outer hull torn open and venting clouds of frozen air into space. 3 enemy ships circled it slowly, their hulls black and jagged, marked with strange red symbols that no one on the bridge of the Valkyrie's Wrath recognized. Small flashes of weapons fire lit the darkness as the attackers continued to pound the station's remaining defenses. "Identify those ships," Captain Voss ordered, her eyes fixed on the screen. Lieutenant Sharma worked quickly. "Scanning now, Captain. Configuration does not match any registered Concord species." "Wait, I'm getting a partial match. Ship design is similar to reports filed by border patrols 18 months ago. Unconfirmed identification. But this could be Korath Ascendancy raiders." Commander Reyes stepped closer to the screen. "The Korath. I thought they stayed on their side of the border." "Apparently not anymore," Voss said grimly. "Options people, talk to me." Zeth Khan, still standing near the back of the bridge, spoke up carefully. "Captain, if I may, Korath raiders typically travel in small, fast groups, using hit-and-run tactics against undefended targets. 3 ships attacking a station this size suggests they expected no resistance at all." "They didn't expect us," Reyes said. "No," Voss agreed. "They didn't." She turned to her weapons officer. "Lieutenant Kim, target the nearest enemy ship. Reyes, get me a channel to that station. See if there's anyone left alive to talk to. Illich, bring us in fast and hard, right between those raiders and the station. I want them to have to choose between shooting at us or finishing off defenseless civilians." "Aye, Captain," came 3 voices at once, and the bridge crew snapped into motion. The Valkyrie's Wrath surged forward, its old engines roaring, with everything Chief Okafor had managed to coax out of them. As the battleship closed the distance, the enemy ships began to notice the newcomer, breaking their circling pattern around the station to face this unexpected threat. "They're turning toward us," Sharma reported. "Good," Voss said. "That means they're not shooting at the station anymore." The first enemy ship opened fire, a burst of red energy bolts streaking across space toward the Valkyrie's Wrath. Illich banked the ship hard, avoiding most of the shots, though 2 struck the forward shields, sending a shudder through the entire vessel. "Shields holding at 91%, Reyes reported. "Return fire," Voss ordered. Lieutenant Kim's hands moved across her console with practiced precision. The Valkyrie's Wrath's main cannons, old but powerful, fired a devastating volley toward the closest raider ship. Unlike the automatic targeting systems used by newer Concord vessels, Kim aimed manually, using years of training and a sharp eye to predict exactly where the enemy ship would be by the time the shots arrived. The shots struck true, tearing through the raider's shields and slamming into its hull. The ship shuddered and spun off course, one of its engines sparking and dying. "Direct hit," Kim called out. "Enemy ship 1 is losing power." On the bridge, a small ripple of satisfaction passed through the crew, but there was no time to celebrate. The other two raider ships turned their full attention toward the Valkyrie's wrath, weapons blazing. "Incoming fire, heavy," Sharma warned. "Evasive pattern gamma," Voss called out. Illick's hands flew across the controls, and the old battleship twisted and dove, moving with a grace that seemed impossible for a ship of its size. Years of hands-on flying experience, without relying entirely on computer-assisted piloting, gave Illick an instinct for the ship's true limits that no simulation could teach. More shots slammed into the shields, and this time, the ship rocked hard enough that several crew members had to grab their consoles to stay upright. "Shields down to 62%, Reyes reported, his voice tight. "Chief Okafor, how are we looking down there?" Voss called over the comm. "Holding together, Captain," Okafor's voice answered, slightly breathless. "But I won't lie to you. This old girl is feeling her age today." "Just keep her flying," Voss said. "Kim, target ship 2. "Locked on, Captain." Another volley of cannon fire streaked out from the Valkyrie's wrath, and this time, both remaining raider ships tried to scatter, no longer confident in their earlier assumption that this old battleship would be an easy target. One of Kim's shots clipped the second raider's shields, weakening them significantly, though the ship remained in the fight. "Captain," Sharma called out suddenly, "I've got a channel open to Kepler 9. It's faint, but someone's alive down there." "Put it through," Voss said. A trembling voice filled the bridge, thick with static and fear. "This is Station Master Delgado. Is that a Concorde ship? Please tell me you're really here. This is Captain Elena Voss, of the Terran Federation ship Valkyrie's Wrath. We hear you, Station Master. Hang on, we're doing everything we can to draw those raiders away from you." "Thank you," Delgado said, his voice cracking with relief. "We have wounded down here. A lot of wounded. Our defense systems are gone. Our comm array is barely holding together, and we thought no one was coming." "We're coming," Voss said firmly. "Just hold on a little longer." The battle outside continued to rage. The damaged first raider ship, though wounded, turned back toward the fight, apparently unwilling to retreat without inflicting more damage first. All three enemy vessels now focused their fire on the Valkyrie's wrath, hoping to overwhelm the single battleship through sheer numbers. "Shields at 40%, Reyes called out, his voice growing more urgent. Voss's mind raced. 3 against 1 was never good odds, even for an experienced crew, but retreating meant leaving the mining station and its wounded people exposed to whatever these raiders wanted to do next. That was not an option she was willing to consider. "Kim, I need a solution," Voss said. "We can't keep taking hits like this." Kim studied her console for a moment, her eyes narrowing in concentration. "Captain, if I can get all 3 enemy ships into a tighter formation, our forward cannon array can hit multiple targets with a single spread shot. It's an old tactic, not something the automatic systems on newer ships are built to use, but our manual targeting can handle it." "Do it," Voss said. "Illick, get us into position. I need those raiders bunched up." "Understood, Captain," Illick said, already adjusting the ship's course. What followed was a dangerous dance through open space. Illick guided the Valkyrie's wrath in a tight, unpredictable pattern, weaving between incoming fire while slowly luring the 3 raider ships closer together as they tried to keep their aim locked on the elusive battleship. It was risky, exposing the ship to fire from multiple angles at once, but it was working. "They're closing formation, Captain," Kim reported. "Almost there. A little more." Shots continued to rain down around the Valkyrie's wrath, several more striking the shields, which had now dropped to 28%. Warning lights flashed across the bridge, and somewhere below decks, an alarm began sounding for a minor hull breach that damage control teams rushed to seal. "Shields critical," Reyes warned. "Captain, we can't take much more of this." "Kim?" Voss asked, her voice steady despite the tension. "Now, Captain, they're in position now." "Fire." Lieutenant Kim's hands moved with perfect precision, unleashing every forward cannon in a single devastating spread shot, aimed to catch all 3 raider ships in its widening arc. The blast tore through space, striking each enemy vessel in turn. The already damaged first raider ship exploded outright, torn apart by the combined force of the impact. The second ship, its shields already weakened from the earlier hit, took heavy damage and began venting atmosphere from a dozen ruptures along its hull. The third ship, catching only the edge of the blast, staggered, but remained mostly intact. For a moment, silence fell across the bridge as everyone watched the results of the attack. 2 enemy ships critically damaged, Sharma reported, her voice filled with quiet disbelief. 1 destroyed outright. The surviving raider ships, clearly recognizing they had badly misjudged their opponent, broke off their attack entirely. Their remaining engines flared as they turned away from both the mining station and the battered but victorious Valkyrie's Wrath, retreating into the darkness of deep space, as quickly as their damaged systems would allow. A cheer went up across the bridge, quiet at first, then growing louder as the reality of what had just happened sank in. Commander Reyes let out a long breath and allowed himself a rare, genuine smile. Lieutenant Illick pumped his fist once, before returning his focus to his console. Even Zeth Khan, standing near the back of the bridge, found himself smiling in a way that surprised him. "Report," Voss said, though her own voice carried a note of relief now. "Shields at 18%, but holding," Reyes said. "Minor hull breach on Deck 7. Damage control is already on it. No serious injuries reported among the crew." "And the station?" Sharma checked her readings. "Kepler 9 reports the attack has stopped. They still have wounded, but the immediate danger has passed." Voss allowed herself a small, tired smile. "Good work, everyone. Truly good work." Over the comm, Station Master Delgado's voice returned, thick with emotion. "Captain Voss, I don't know how to thank you. You saved this entire station. My people, my family, we would all be dead if you hadn't come." "That's what we're here for, Station Master," Voss said. "Prepare your wounded for transfer. We're sending medical teams over immediately." "Thank you," Delgado said again. "Thank you." As the Valkyrie's Wrath moved carefully alongside the damaged mining station, shuttles launched from its hangar bay carrying Dr. Wells and her medical teams, ready to help treat the injured colonists below. The battle was over, but the work of recovery was only just beginning. Down in engineering, Chief Okafor leaned against a console, wiping sweat from her brow as she surveyed the readouts of the ship's condition. The old engines had held together through everything, but just barely. She patted the nearest wall affectionately. "You did good, old girl," she murmured. "You did real good." Zeth Khan approached her quietly. "Chief Engineer, what you and this crew accomplished today should not have been possible, according to Concord Fleet Doctrine. 3 raider ships against 1 outdated battleship, and you won decisively, with minimal casualties." Okafor allowed herself a tired smile. Doctrine doesn't account for people who actually know their ship. It doesn't account for a captain who trusts her crew, or a weapons officer who can outthink a targeting computer, or a pilot who spent more hours flying by feel than most people spend flying with a computer holding their hand. "I am beginning to understand that," Zeth admitted. "I came aboard this ship, believing Terran technology was simply behind the times. I am starting to see that I misunderstood what actually makes a ship strong." "Took you long enough," Okafor said, though not unkindly. Hours later, once the wounded had been treated and the immediate crisis had passed, Captain Voss sat alone in her quarters, reviewing the battle reports on her datapad. The Valkyrie's Wrath had saved Kepler Mining Station 9, destroying 1 enemy ship and severely damaging 2 others, all without losing a single member of her crew. It was, by any measure, a remarkable victory. And yet, she knew, back at Concord Fleet Command, this victory would likely be dismissed as luck, or as an isolated incident that meant nothing in the face of the Council's larger decision. She had seen it before. Numbers on a chart mattered more to some people than results in the field. A knock came at her door. "Enter," she called. Commander Reyes stepped inside, holding a datapad of his own. "Captain, I thought you'd want to see this. I pulled some information on those raider ships before they retreated. Their configuration matches recent intelligence reports about increased Korath ascendancy activity along the border sectors." Voss took the datapad, scanning through the information quickly. "How increased?" "Significantly," Reyes said. "There have been at least 6 unconfirmed raids in neighboring sectors over the past 2 months, all with similar patterns. Small groups testing weak points along Concord territory." Voss frowned, setting the pad down slowly. "Testing weak points sounds like preparation for something larger." "That was my thought as well," Reyes said. "Have you reported this to Fleet Command?" I sent a preliminary report an hour ago. Haven't heard back yet. Voss nodded slowly, staring at the wall of her quarters, as her mind worked through the implications. If the Korath Ascendancy was indeed testing Concord defenses along the border, and if the Concord fleet was currently in the middle of transitioning away from older proven ships toward newer, untested Zenithian technology, the timing could not be worse. "Get some rest, Marcus," she said finally. "Something tells me this quiet little assignment out here in the Rimward Drift is not going to stay quiet for much longer." Reyes nodded and turned to leave, pausing at the door. "Captain, for what it's worth, whatever happens next, I'm glad we're the ones out here to face it." Voss allowed herself a small, tired smile. "So am I, Marcus. So am I." Outside, in the vast darkness beyond the ship's hull, the stars continued their silent watch, unaware that far beyond the edges of Concord space, a much larger storm was already beginning to gather, one that would soon test the Valkyrie's wrath and its crew, far more than a handful of raiders ever could. 2 days later, a response finally arrived from Fleet Command. Captain Voss gathered her senior officers in the small briefing room just off the bridge to hear it together. The screen at the head of the table flickered to life, showing not Admiral Vex this time, but a younger Concord officer named Commodore Ashna Payrell, a Voss's car administrator known more for paperwork than for combat experience. "Captain Voss," Commodore Payrell began, her tone brisk and businesslike. "Fleet Command has reviewed your report regarding the incident at Kepler Mining Station 9. While we commend your crew's actions in protecting civilian lives, we must note some concerns." Reyes leaned forward slightly, already bristling. "Concerns, Commodore?" "Your engagement resulted in significant damage to your vessel," Payrell continued, glancing down at a datapad rather than looking directly at the screen. "Shield integrity dropped to 18%. This confirms the assessment that Terran-class vessels lack the durability required for modern engagements. Had you been facing a larger force, the outcome could have been quite different." Voss kept her expression neutral, though she felt her jaw tighten. "Commodore, with respect, my ship destroyed one enemy vessel and critically damaged 2 others, using a crew of 180, without losing a single life. I would call that a successful engagement by any reasonable standard." "The Council's decision regarding Terran ship classifications remains unchanged," Payrell said, her tone unwavering. "As for the intelligence you forwarded regarding possible Korath Ascendancy activity, that matter has been passed to the Border Security Division for review. In the meantime, your orders remain the same. Continue patrol of Sector K-19 and await your replacement vessel." "And if the Korath Ascendancy is indeed massing forces along the border?" Voss pressed. "Sector K-19 sits closer to that border than any other Concord holding in this region." Commodore Payrell hesitated for just a moment, the first sign of uncertainty in her otherwise rehearsed responses. "Border Security is aware of the reports, Captain. Should the situation escalate, appropriate forces will be deployed. Fleet Command out." The screen went dark, and for a moment, no one in the briefing room spoke. "Unbelievable," Reyes finally muttered, sitting back in his chair. "We save an entire mining station, and all they can talk about is our shield percentage." "They see what they want to see," Voss said quietly. "A damaged ship confirms what they already decided. A victory doesn't change their minds. Only a loss would have, and we didn't give them one." Chief Okafor, seated near the end of the table, shook her head slowly. "With respect, Captain, I don't understand how anyone could look at what we did out there and still call this ship obsolete." "Because they're not looking at the ship, Chief," Voss said. "They're looking at a chart, and on that chart, our numbers are lower than a Zenithian-powered cruiser. It doesn't matter what we actually accomplished. It only matters what fits their plan." Zeth Khan, seated quietly near Okafor, spoke up for the first time. "If I may offer an observation, Captain, I have reviewed the technical specifications the Council used to justify their decision. The comparison charts measure raw engine output, shield capacity, and weapons range in isolation. They do not measure crew training, tactical flexibility, or the kind of improvisation your people demonstrated during the battle. By the Council's own numbers, what your crew accomplished should not have been possible." "And yet it was," Reyes said. "And yet it was," Zeth agreed. "I confess, when I was assigned to this ship, I expected to spend 6 months writing a report about outdated Terran engineering practices. I did not expect to witness something that challenges the very foundation of how the Concorde measures a ship's worth. Voss studied the young Sonari engineer for a long moment. "And what will you write in that report of yours, Zeth?" Zeth considered the question carefully before answering. "I believe I will write the truth, Captain. Whether the Council chooses to listen is beyond my control." A quiet silence settled over the room, though it was not an unhappy one. Despite the dismissive response from Fleet Command, there was a growing sense among the officers gathered that something important had shifted, even if the Council back home refused to see it yet. "What about the Korath?" Lieutenant Illick asked from where he sat near the door, having joined the meeting once his shift ended. "If they're really testing our defenses out here, shouldn't we be doing more than just sitting around waiting for a replacement ship that might never come?" Voss nodded slowly. "You're right, Tomas. We can't simply wait around and hope Fleet Command takes the threat seriously. Commander Reyes, I want continued long-range scans of the border sectors, focused especially on any unusual ship movements. Lieutenant Sharma, keep monitoring all available communication channels for any further distress signals or unusual activity." "Aye, Captain," both officers answered. "And Chief Okafor," Voss continued, "I want this ship in the best possible condition, as quickly as possible. If the Korath Ascendancy really is preparing for something larger, I have a feeling we're going to need every bit of strength this old ship has left to give." "Already on it, Captain," Okafor said. "My teams have been running repairs around the clock since we returned from Kepler 9. Give us another 2 days, and we'll be back to full combat readiness." "Good," Voss said. "Dismissed, everyone. Let's get back to work." As the officers filed out of the briefing room, Voss remained behind for a moment, staring at the dark screen where Commodore Peyrell's dismissive face had appeared only minutes before. She thought of Ambassador Chen's words from the council chamber about a ship that had never lost a real battle. She thought of the wounded colonists aboard Kepler 9, alive today, because her crew had refused to accept that their ship was somehow less capable simply because a committee said so. Whatever the council believed, whatever charts and numbers they used to justify their decisions, Voss knew the truth now more clearly than ever. The Valkyrie's wrath was not obsolete. It was simply waiting for its moment, and something told her that moment was coming sooner than anyone back at Fleet Command could imagine. A week passed after the battle at Kepler Mining Station 9, and the Valkyrie's wrath returned to its slow, quiet patrol of Sector K-19. The repairs Chief Okafor had promised were completed on schedule, and the old battleship once again ran smoothly, its shields fully restored, its cannons freshly calibrated. But the quiet did not last. It was Commander Reyes who brought the new orders to the bridge, his expression grim as he read from his datapad. "Captain, we've received a new directive from Fleet Command. Priority orders, this time." "Let's hear it," Voss said, turning from the view screen. "We're being sent on a deep reconnaissance mission," Reyes said. "Fleet Command wants confirmation of Korath Ascendancy fleet movements along the border, specifically within a region known as the Ashvale Expanse. It's just past the edge of Concorde territory, technically neutral space, but close enough to Korath holdings that it's considered extremely dangerous." "They want us to scout Korath territory alone?" Illick asked from his station, clearly startled. "That's what the orders say," Reyes confirmed. "No support ships, no backup, just us." Voss studied the message on her own screen carefully. It was signed by Commodore Peyrell, the same officer who had dismissed their victory at Kepler 9 so easily. The reasoning given was simple and cold. The Valkyrie's wrath was scheduled for decommission regardless of outcome, making it, in the Council's eyes, an acceptable risk for a mission too dangerous to send a newer, more valuable ship into. "They're using us because we're expendable," Voss said quietly, and though her voice remained steady, there was an edge to it now. "That's exactly what this is," Reyes agreed, his jaw tight with anger. "If we don't come back, no real loss, as far as the Council is concerned. Just an old ship that was already scheduled to be scrapped." Zeth Khan, standing near the back of the bridge, as he often did during these briefings, spoke up carefully. "Captain, I feel I must say something. This assignment is deeply unfair. I have reviewed Concorde Fleet Protocol extensively, and reconnaissance missions into hostile territory typically require at minimum 2 support vessels for safety and verification purposes." "I'm aware, Zeth," Voss said. "But orders are orders, and if there truly is a Korath fleet massing near our border, Someone needs to confirm it before it's too late to prepare. She looked around at her assembled officers, seeing the same mixture of anger and determination on each of their faces. I won't pretend this isn't a dangerous assignment. It is. But if what we saw at Kepler 9 really was the beginning of something larger, then the information we bring back could save countless lives across the border sectors. I intend to see this mission through, and I intend to bring every single one of you home when it's done. Are we agreed? A chorus of firm agreement rose from the bridge crew, and Voss nodded, satisfied. Set a course for the Ashvale Expanse, she ordered. Quiet running, minimal power signature. I don't want anything announcing our presence out there until we're ready to be seen. The journey to the Ashvale Expanse took nearly 4 days, and with each passing hour, the mood aboard the Valkyrie's Wrath grew more tense. The crew ran silent drills, checked and rechecked every system, and prepared themselves as best they could for whatever waited on the other side of the border. Chief Okafor spent long hours in engineering, ensuring every system that could be quieted was, reducing the ship's power signature to the barest minimum needed to keep essential functions running. We're basically flying blind out here if we keep power this low, Okafor explained to Zeth during one of their late-night engineering shifts. But it also means the Korath sensors are less likely to pick us up before we're ready to be seen. A careful trade, Zeth observed. Reduced awareness in exchange for reduced visibility. Exactly, Okafor said. It's a balance we've had to learn the hard way, over years of missions where we didn't have the luxury of a fancy new stealth system built into the hull. We make do with what we've got. On the bridge, Captain Voss studied the long-range sensor readings carefully as the ship approached the border of the Ashvale Expanse. Even from this distance, faint energy signatures were beginning to appear on the edges of their scanners, more than she had expected to see in a region long considered mostly empty. Lieutenant Sharma, what are you picking up? Voss asked. Sharma frowned at her console, adjusting the sensitivity of her sensors. Captain, I'm reading multiple energy signatures ahead, consistent with ship engines. A lot of them. The readings are still too faint for an exact count, but based on the spread pattern, I'd estimate at minimum several dozen vessels, possibly more. The bridge went quiet. Several dozen, Reyes repeated slowly. That's not a raiding party, that's a fleet. Continue approach, but reduce speed, Voss ordered. I want a clearer picture, before we commit to anything. As the Valkyrie's Wrath crept closer to the edge of the Ashvale Expanse, the sensor readings grew clearer, and what they revealed made even the most experienced members of the crew go pale. Spread across a wide stretch of space, gathered around a massive dark shape that dwarfed every other vessel nearby, was an enormous Korath fleet. Warships of every size, from small fast attack craft to massive capital ships bristling with weapons, filled the void in numbers that far exceeded anything Concord intelligence had predicted. By the stars, Reyes breathed, staring at the tactical display. That's got to be over 200 ships. 211, by my count, Sharma said quietly, her voice shaking slightly. And Captain, that large vessel at the center of the formation, it's massive. Sensor readings suggest it might be some kind of flagship or command vessel. Zeth Khan stepped closer to the display, studying the readings with growing alarm. Captain, I recognize elements of that ship's design from old Concord archives. If my analysis is correct, that could be a Korath Dreadnought-class vessel, a type of ship not seen in confirmed engagements for over a decade. If they have built and deployed something like that, it represents a significant advancement in their military capability. Voss stared at the screen, her mind racing. This was no simple raiding party testing the edges of Concord territory. This was the beginning of an invasion force, larger and more advanced than anything the Concord border defenses were prepared to handle. We need to get this information back to Fleet Command immediately, Voss said. Sharma, prepare a full data burst transmission, everything we've gathered, sent on the highest priority channel. Captain, Sharma said, hesitating. If we transmit now, at this range, there's a strong chance the Korath fleet will detect the signal and know we're here. I'm aware of the risk, Voss said, but if we don't get this information out, and that fleet crosses the border before Concord defenses are ready, the consequences will be far worse than anything that could happen to us. She looked around at her officers, each of them understanding the weight of what she was asking. This is exactly the kind of decision this crew has faced before, and we've always chosen to do what's right. even when it's dangerous. I won't order anyone to stay quiet about what we've seen out here. Sharma, send the transmission. Aye, Captain, Sharma said, her hands steady despite the tension, and began preparing the data burst. Just as the transmission completed, alarms began blaring across the bridge. Captain, multiple ships breaking formation from the main fleet, Sharma called out. They've detected our transmission, they're moving to intercept. How many? Voss demanded. At least 15 ships, Captain, and closing fast. Voss's mind raced through their options. 15 ships against one battleship, even a well-trained one, were odds that offered little hope of victory in open combat. Their only real chance was to run, and run fast, back toward the safety of Concord territory before the pursuing Korath ships could catch them. Illic, get us out of here. Best possible speed. Plot a course back toward Concord space, Voss ordered. Aye, Captain. Illic's hands flew across his console, and the Valkyrie's wrath surged into motion, engines roaring as it turned away from the massive Korath fleet and raced back toward the border. Chief Okafor, I need everything you can give me, Voss called over the comm. We have 15 hostile ships in pursuit, and we need every bit of speed this ship has left. Understood, Captain. Okafor's voice came back, already moving toward the engine controls. Give me a minute, and I'll see what I can do. Behind them, the pursuing Korath ships closed the distance with alarming speed, their own advanced engines allowing them to gain on the fleeing battleship far faster than Voss would have liked. Weapons fire began streaking past the Valkyrie's wrath, close enough that Illic had to weave the ship through a series of tight evasive maneuvers to avoid direct hits. Shields taking fire. Down to 83%, Reyes reported. Return fire. Rear cannons. Keep them at a distance. Voss ordered. Lieutenant Kim, strapped into her weapons station, fired the ship's rear cannons in a series of precise bursts, forcing the closest pursuing ships to break formation slightly, to avoid the incoming shots, buying the Valkyrie's wrath precious seconds. We're gaining a little distance, Captain, Illic reported, though sweat beaded on his forehead from the intense concentration required to keep the ship weaving through enemy fire while maintaining top speed. But they're still closing overall. At this rate, they'll catch us before we reach the border. Voss's mind worked quickly, searching for any advantage they might have. Zeth, you said the flagship at the center of that fleet was a Dreadnought-class vessel. What do you know about the pursuing ships? Are they the same class, or something smaller? Zeth studied the sensor readings quickly. Based on their size and speed, Captain, these appear to be smaller escort vessels, likely designed for speed and pursuit rather than heavy combat. Their weapons are strong, but their shields may not be as robust as the larger ships in the main fleet. That's something, Voss said. Reyes, options. We can't outrun 15 ships forever, not with them gaining on us like this. Reyes studied the tactical display, his engineering mind working through the problem. Captain, what if we use the debris field near the Kestrel Nebula? It's along our current course, about 10 minutes ahead. If we can lead them into that field, the same maneuverability that makes this ship able to weave through tight spaces could work in our favor. Newer ships built for speed and power sometimes trade away close quarters handling. Voss nodded slowly. It's a risk, but it's the best option we have. Illic, adjust course for the Kestrel Nebula debris field. Aye, Captain, Illic said, already making the adjustments. The chase continued, tense and dangerous, as the Valkyrie's wrath raced toward the debris field, with 15 Korath pursuit ships closing in from behind. Every member of the crew understood the stakes now. If they failed to escape, not only would they lose their lives, but the vital information about the massive Korath fleet would never reach Concord Fleet Command in time to prepare a proper defense. As the first scattered pieces of debris began appearing on the view screen, remnants of some ancient cosmic collision that had left the region littered with rock and metal fragments, Voss took a deep breath and prepared her crew for what would come next. This is going to get rough, she said. Everyone, hold on tight. The Valkyrie's wrath plunged into the debris field, and the true test of skill and nerve was about to begin. Massive chunks of rock and twisted metal drifted through the darkness, remnants of whatever ancient disaster had scattered them across this stretch of space centuries ago. Illich guided the ship through the maze with careful, practiced hands, banking sharply around a boulder the size of a small moon, then diving beneath a tangle of broken metal that might once have been part of a much larger vessel. They're still following, Sharma reported, watching the pursuing ships on her scanner. But Captain, 2 of them just clipped debris fragments. Minor damage, but they're slowing down. Keep going, Voss said, gripping the arms of her command chair as the ship banked hard again. Illik, take us deeper. Aye, Captain, Illik said through gritted teeth, sweat now clearly visible on his brow, as he wove the Valkyrie's wrath through increasingly tight gaps between drifting debris. Every maneuver required split-second timing, and one mistake could mean slamming into a piece of rock large enough to tear the ship apart. Behind them, the pursuing Korath ships struggled to match the maneuver, their sleeker, faster hulls built for open space combat, rather than the kind of tight, twisting flight the debris field demanded. One ship clipped a large fragment and spun off course, tumbling out of the chase entirely. Another 2 collided with smaller pieces of debris, damaging their shields enough that they fell back from the pursuit. That's 3 down, Reyes reported, a note of grim satisfaction in his voice. 12 still pursuing, but they're falling behind. Voss allowed herself the faintest hint of relief, though she knew the danger was far from over. Kim, if any of them get close enough, don't hesitate to fire. Understood, Captain, Kim said, her hands steady on her weapons console despite the chaos around them. As the Valkyrie's wrath continued its dangerous dance through the debris field, one of the more aggressive Korath pilots managed to close the distance, weaving through the wreckage with surprising skill. Weapons fire streaked past the battleship, one shot grazing the shields hard enough to send a shudder through the entire ship. Shields at 71%, Reyes called out. Kim, that one's getting too close, Voss said. On it, Captain. Kim adjusted her targeting quickly, waiting for the perfect moment, as the pursuing ship banked around a large chunk of debris. The instant it came into clear view, she fired, and the shot struck true, tearing through the enemy ship's weakened shields and forcing it to break off pursuit, trailing smoke and sparks as it fell back. Splash 1 more, Reyes reported. 11 remaining, Captain, and they're falling further behind. Minutes stretched on, each one feeling far longer than it truly was, as the Valkyrie's wrath wove its way through the treacherous field of drifting wreckage. Slowly but surely, the pursuing Korath ships fell further and further behind, unable to match the older battleship's tight, precise maneuvering through such a hazardous environment. Finally, as the ship emerged from the far side of the debris field, the sensors showed only scattered, distant contacts, no longer able to keep pace. Captain, they've broken off pursuit, Sharma reported, relief evident in her voice. We've lost them. A collective breath seemed to release across the entire bridge. Voss allowed herself to sit back in her chair for the first time in what felt like hours. Confirm the transmission went through before we entered the debris field. Sharma checked her logs quickly. Confirmed, Captain. Full data burst was sent and acknowledged by a Concord relay station before we lost the signal. Fleet Command should have received our report on the Korath fleet. Good, Voss said, though the relief in her voice was tempered by the memory of exactly what they had seen. 211 ships, including what appeared to be a massive dreadnought-class vessel, gathered just beyond the Concord border. This was no simple raid. This was preparation for a full-scale invasion. Set a course back to Sector K-19, Voss ordered. Let's get this ship home and prepare for whatever comes next. The journey back to friendly territory passed without further incident, though the mood aboard the Valkyrie's wrath remained tense. Every member of the crew understood what they had witnessed, and every member understood that the quiet days of routine patrol duty were almost certainly over. Upon their return to Sector K-19, Voss immediately requested a direct conference with Fleet Command, insisting on speaking personally with Admiral Vex, rather than accepting another dismissive response from Commodore Peyrell. To her relief, the request was granted, and within hours, Admiral Vex's familiar face appeared on the bridge view screen, his expression far more serious than during their previous conversation. Captain Voss, Vex began without preamble. I have reviewed your data transmission personally. The images and readings you captured of the Korath fleet are deeply concerning. My analysts confirm your assessment. What you observed appears to be a significant invasion force, far larger than anything our border intelligence had previously indicated. Admiral, if that fleet crosses into Concord territory, our current border defenses will not be able to hold, Voss said bluntly. We saw the scale of it firsthand. 211 ships, at minimum, including what Lieutenant Khan identified as a Korath Dreadnought-class vessel. Vex's expression darkened further. I have already begun pushing for an emergency council session to address the threat directly. Your report, along with the sensor data you captured, will be critical evidence in convincing the more skeptical delegates of the danger we face. What about the transition to Zenithian technology? Reyes asked, stepping into view of the screen. If the Korath attack while half our fleet is in the middle of switching over to new systems, we could be caught completely unprepared. Vex's jaw tightened. That is precisely my concern as well, Commander. I intend to raise that exact issue at the emergency session. In the meantime, Captain Voss, I want your ship to remain on high alert. Given your crew's demonstrated combat effectiveness, and given the location of your current patrol sector relative to the Ashvale expanse, you may well find yourselves on the front line if the Korath decide to move sooner rather than later. Understood, Admiral, Voss said. The Valkyrie's Wrath will be ready. After the transmission ended, Voss remained on the bridge for a long moment, staring at the star field beyond the view screen. Zeth Khan approached her quietly. Captain, if I may ask, do you believe the Council will listen this time? Will they reconsider their decision about Terran ships, given what we now know? Voss considered the question carefully before answering. I don't know, Zeth. Councils are slow to admit mistakes, even when the evidence is right in front of them. But I do know one thing. Whatever they decide about our ship's classification, this crew is going to be ready when the Korath come. That much I can promise you. Zeth nodded slowly, a look of quiet respect in his eyes. Then I believe, Captain, that whatever happens next, this ship and this crew will not be found wanting. Voss allowed herself a small, tired smile, though her eyes remained fixed on the distant stars, watching for any sign of the storm she now knew was coming. Somewhere out there, beyond the border, 211 Korath warships were preparing to strike, and when they did, the Valkyrie's Wrath, obsolete or not, would be standing ready to meet them. The emergency council session lasted 3 full days, filled with heated debate, careful diplomacy, and no small amount of stubborn disbelief among certain delegates, who found it difficult to accept that a threat this large could have gathered so close to Concord space without earlier warning. In the end, Admiral Vex's testimony, backed by the sensor data and first-hand account provided by Captain Voss and her crew, proved impossible to ignore. The Council authorized an emergency mobilization of Concord border defenses, though the process of gathering and coordinating a proper response fleet would take time that, as it turned out, the Korath Ascendancy had no intention of giving them. 6 days after the Valkyrie's Wrath returned from its dangerous reconnaissance mission, the storm finally broke. It began with a wave of distress signals flooding every communication channel across the border sectors, dozens of them at once, from outposts, colonies, and patrol ships, all reporting the same terrifying news. The Korath fleet had crossed into Concord territory, and it was advancing fast. Captain Voss stood on the bridge of the Valkyrie's Wrath as the reports came in, her expression grim but steady. Sharma, give me the full picture. Where are they headed? Lieutenant Sharma's hands worked quickly across her console, compiling the flood of incoming data. Captain, based on their current heading, the Korath fleet appears to be moving directly toward the Meridian Gate, the primary defensive choke point protecting the core Concord systems. If they break through there, there's very little standing between them and the heart of Concord space. How long until they reach it? Voss asked. At their current speed, less than 6 hours. Commander Reyes stepped closer to the tactical display, studying the projected battle lines. What's our current defensive strength at the Meridian Gate? Sharma checked the latest fleet deployment reports. 23 Concord vessels currently stationed there, Captain. Mostly newer ships, equipped with Zenithian drives, but nowhere near the numbers needed to match 211 Korath warships. The bridge fell silent as the scale of the coming battle settled over everyone present. 23 ships, however advanced, against more than 200 enemy vessels, was not a fight anyone could realistically expect to win, not without significant reinforcement. Captain, Reyes said quietly, our orders still have us stationed here in Sector K-19. We're not officially assigned to the Meridian Gate defense. Voss looked at her second-in-command for a long moment, then around at the rest of her bridge crew, each of them watching her, waiting to see what she would decide. She thought of the wounded colonists at Kepler 9, of the Council's dismissive attitude toward her ship's proven capabilities, of the massive Korath fleet she had seen with her own eyes just days ago. "Get me a direct line to Admiral Vex," Voss said. Within minutes, the Admiral's face appeared on the view screen, clearly in the middle of a chaotic command center, other officers moving urgently in the background behind him. "Captain Voss, I assume you've heard the news." "I have, Admiral. My ship is currently the closest Concord vessel to Sector K-19's border with the Meridian Gate defense line. I am requesting permission to redeploy immediately in support of the defense." Vex hesitated only a moment. "Captain, your ship was scheduled for decommission. I have no official authority to order you into what may well be the largest battle this region has seen in decades." "Then don't order me, Admiral," Voss said firmly. "Grant me permission, and I'll take my ship and my crew into that fight, because it's the right thing to do, regardless of what the Council's charts say about our classification." For a long moment, Vex studied her through the screen, and something like genuine respect flickered across his weathered features. "Permission granted, Captain Voss. And for what it's worth, I have a feeling the Meridian Gate defense is going to need every bit of skill your crew can bring to that fight." "We won't let you down, Admiral," Voss said, Valkyrie's wrath out. The screen went dark, and Voss turned to face her assembled bridge crew, her voice carrying clearly across the space. "You heard the Admiral. Set course for the Meridian Gate. Best possible speed. Today, this ship is going to prove exactly what it's capable of." A determined energy swept through the bridge as officers moved to their stations. Illick's hands flew across the helm controls, plotting the fastest possible course. Sharma began coordinating communication with the other defense ships, already gathering at the Meridian Gate. Kim ran a final check of every weapons system, ensuring the ship's cannons were primed and ready for the fight ahead. Down in engineering, Chief Okafor received the news with a grim but determined nod. "All right, everyone," she called out to her engineering team. "You heard the captain. This old ship is about to fly into the biggest fight of her life, and I intend for her to come through it in one piece. Double-check every system. Triple-check the ones that matter most. Let's give the captain everything this ship has to give." Zeth Khan, standing nearby, felt a strange mixture of fear and something close to pride swell within him. He had come aboard this ship expecting to study outdated Terran technology. Instead, he had found himself among a crew willing to fly directly into the largest battle in decades, driven not by orders, but by a genuine desire to protect others. "Chief Engineer," Zeth said, "is there anything I can do to assist?" Okafor glanced at him, a small smile crossing her tired face. "Actually, Zeth, there is. Your knowledge of Zenithian systems could help us understand exactly what we're up against out there. If the newer Concord ships at the Meridian Gate are having trouble with Korath tactics, your insight into how those systems work might make the difference." Zeth nodded firmly. "Then let us get to work." The Valkyrie's Wrath arrived at the Meridian Gate just as the battle began in earnest. The scene before them was chaos on a massive scale. 23 Concord ships, gleaming with the sleek modern lines of Zenithian technology, formed a defensive line against the overwhelming tide of Korath warships pouring through the gate. Weapons fire lit up the darkness in bursts of red and blue, explosions blossoming silently in the vacuum of space as ships on both sides took hits. "By the stars," Reyes breathed, staring at the scale of the engagement unfolding before them. "There's so many of them." Voss took in the scene quickly, her mind already working through tactical options. "Sharma, get me a channel to the fleet commander." Moments later, a harried voice filled the bridge, the sound of alarms blaring in the background. "This is Fleet Captain Arinva Dask, commanding the Meridian Gate defense." "Who is this?" "Fleet Captain, this is Captain Elena Voss, of the Terran Federation ship Valkyrie's Wrath. We're here to reinforce your line." A brief pause. "Voss? I've heard of you. The ship that took out 3 Korath raiders single-handedly. We could use whatever help you can give us, Captain. Our shields are struggling to keep pace with the volume of fire coming from their smaller ships, and that dreadnought at the center of their formation is tearing through our heavier vessels." "Understood," Voss said. "We're moving into position now." As the Valkyrie's Wrath entered the fray, Voss quickly saw exactly what Fleet Captain Dask had meant. The newer Concord ships, for all their advanced weapons and powerful engines, seemed to struggle against the sheer number and aggressive tactics of the Korath fleet. Their automated targeting systems, designed for efficiency against predictable enemy patterns, seemed to falter against the erratic, swarming attack style the Korath ships employed. "Kim, status on the nearest hostile group," Voss called out. 6 enemy fighters converging on the Concorde cruiser Aurelian Star, Captain, Kim reported. Their shields are down to 30% and dropping fast. Illick, get us there. Kim, target those fighters. Manual firing solution. Aye, Captain, came the response, and the Valkyrie's wrath surged forward, engines roaring, as it closed the distance to the beleaguered Concorde cruiser. What followed was a demonstration of exactly the kind of skill that had carried the Valkyrie's wrath through every dangerous engagement in its long service history. While the automated systems on other Concorde ships struggled to predict the swarming, unpredictable movements of the smaller Korath fighters, Lieutenant Kim's manual targeting, honed through years of hands-on training, adapted instantly to the chaotic battle. "Firing," Kim announced, and a precise burst of cannon fire tore through 2 of the attacking fighters in quick succession, forcing the remaining 4 to break off their assault on the Aurelian Star. "This is Fleet Captain Dask," came a relieved voice over the comm. "That's some fine shooting, Captain Voss. You just saved a lot of lives over here." "We're not done yet," Voss said. "Illick, keep us moving. Target the next group in trouble." For the next hour, the Valkyrie's wrath moved through the chaos of the battle like a guardian angel, using its crew's unmatched skill and the ship's surprising maneuverability to reinforce whichever section of the Concorde line was struggling most. Where newer ships faltered against unpredictable enemy tactics, the human crew's years of hands-on combat experience and manual precision proved more valuable than any automated system. But the tide of battle remained uncertain. The massive Korath dreadnought at the center of the enemy formation continued to punch through Concorde defenses, its heavy weapons overwhelming even the newest Zenithian-powered cruisers. "Captain," Sharma called out urgently. "The dreadnought is moving toward the Meridian Gate command station. If it breaches the station's shields, we lose our entire command and control network for this sector." Voss studied the tactical display, watching the massive enemy vessel grind through Concorde defenses like they were nothing. No single Concorde ship, however advanced, seemed capable of standing against it alone. "Zeth," Voss called out, "you've been studying that dreadnought's readings since we arrived. Tell me you found something." Zeth, who had been working closely with the ship's sensor array for the past hour, nodded quickly. "Captain, I believe I have identified a potential weakness. The dreadnought's shields, while powerful, rely on a network of 6 generator nodes spread across its hull, similar in principle to older Vossiscar designs I studied during my training. If those nodes could be disabled simultaneously, or in rapid succession, the ship's shields would collapse entirely." "Simultaneously," Reyes said. "That would require a coordinated strike from multiple ships, hitting precise targets at the exact same moment. Our automated systems can't manage that kind of coordination against a moving target that size." "No," Zeth agreed, "but perhaps manual coordination, executed by skilled crews working together, could." Voss's mind raced, already forming a plan. "Sharma, get me a channel to every Concorde ship still in fighting condition. I have an idea, and I'm going to need everyone's help to make it work." "Channel open, Captain," Sharma reported moments later. "All surviving vessels are listening." Voss took a breath, steadying her voice before speaking to the entire battered fleet. "This is Captain Elena Voss, of the Terran Federation ship, Valkyrie's Wrath. Listen carefully, because we don't have much time. That dreadnought's shields are powered by 6 generator nodes spread across its hull. If we can hit all 6 at nearly the same moment, its shields will collapse entirely, and we can bring that ship down before it reaches the command station." A skeptical voice cut through the channel, one of the other Concorde captains. "Our automated targeting systems can't coordinate that kind of precision strike against a moving target, Captain Voss. It's not physically possible with current fleet doctrine." "Then don't use your automated systems," Voss said firmly. "Switch to manual targeting, and follow my lead. My weapons officer will call the firing sequence. Trust your own hands, not just your computers. We've done it before, and we can do it again, together." There was a pause on the channel, filled with the tense silence of officers weighing an unfamiliar and risky plan against the alternative of watching their command station fall. Fleet Captain Dask's voice broke the silence. "You heard the captain. Every ship still able to fight, switch to manual targeting, and form up on the Valkyrie's Wrath." Let's bring that monster down. One by one, the surviving Concorde ships began falling into formation around the old Terran Battleship, their captains and weapons officers switching from automated systems to manual controls, trusting in a tactic none of them had ever trained for, guided by a ship the Council itself had declared obsolete only weeks earlier. Zeth, I need those generator node locations mapped precisely, Voss said. Sharma, relay the targeting data to every ship in formation. Zeth worked quickly, his fingers flying across the console as he cross-referenced the Dreadnought's hull design with the sensor data streaming in from the Valkyrie's Wrath scanners. Captain, I have the coordinates. Sending them now. Node 1 is located on the dorsal hull, forward section. Node 2, ventral hull, aft section. Node 3 through 6 are distributed symmetrically around the midsection. Kim, you're taking Node 1, Voss said. Fleet Captain Dask, your ship take Node 2. I want the rest of the formation splitting the remaining 4 targets evenly. Acknowledgements came back quickly from the other ships as they maneuvered into position, the entire formation moving as one toward the massive Korath dreadnought, which continued its relentless advance toward the Meridian Gate command station, seemingly unaware of the coordinated strike being prepared against it. We need to get in close enough for a clean shot on all 6 nodes simultaneously, Voss said. Illik, take us in. Aye, Captain, Illik said, guiding the Valkyrie's Wrath forward through the chaos of the ongoing battle, weaving between smaller Korath fighters and drifting debris from destroyed ships, as the formation closed in on their massive target. The Dreadnought's point defense weapons began firing as the Concorde formation approached, filling the space around them with a hail of smaller caliber fire, designed to pick off incoming fighters and missiles. Illik banked hard, dodging the worst of it, while the ship's shields absorbed the rest. Shields at 58%, Reyes reported. We're taking hits, Captain, but holding. Almost in position, Voss said, watching the tactical display closely as the Concorde formation spread out around the Dreadnought's hull, each ship maneuvering toward its assigned target node. Kim, report. Node 1 in range, Captain, awaiting your mark. Across the comm channel, Voss heard similar reports coming in from the other ships in the formation, each weapons officer confirming they had their assigned target locked and ready. On my mark, Voss said, her voice carrying steady and clear across the channel, even as the ship shook from another glancing hit against its shields. 3, 2, 1, fire. 6 precise, simultaneous strikes tore into the Korath dreadnought's hull at exactly the same moment, each one aimed with the kind of manual precision that no automated targeting system could have achieved against a target that size, moving at that speed, defended by that volume of point defense fire. The massive ship shuddered visibly on the view screen as its shields flickered, strained, and then collapsed entirely in a brilliant flash of dissipating energy. Shields down, Zeth called out, watching the sensor readings with something close to disbelief. Captain, the dreadnought's shields have failed completely. All ships, concentrate fire on the dreadnought now, while its shields are down, Voss ordered. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every surviving Concorde ship in the formation turned its full weapons capacity toward the now vulnerable dreadnought, cannon fire and missiles tearing into its unshielded hull from every angle. Explosions bloomed across the massive vessel's surface as critical systems began failing under the sustained assault. Direct hits across multiple decks, Sharma reported, her voice rising with excitement despite the tension. Captain, the dreadnought's main reactor is showing signs of critical instability. Aboard the bridge of the Valkyrie's Wrath, everyone watched in tense silence as the massive Korath flagship, the very heart of the invasion force, began to break apart under the combined assault. A final, brilliant explosion tore through its core, and the once mighty dreadnought split apart into burning wreckage, drifting silently amid the chaos of the ongoing battle. A cheer erupted across the comm channel, dozens of voices from every surviving Concorde ship celebrating the destruction of the enemy's most powerful vessel. On the bridge of the Valkyrie's Wrath, Commander Reyes let out a whoop of triumph, while Lieutenant Sharma pumped her fist in the air. Even Zeth Khan allowed himself a wide, genuine smile. But Captain Voss knew the battle was not yet over. Report on remaining Korath forces, she called out, cutting through the celebration. Sharma quickly composed herself, checking her sensors. Captain, without their flagship, the remaining Korath ships are showing signs of disorganization. Several groups are already breaking formation and retreating toward the border. Voss watched the tactical display as, one by one, the surviving Korath warships began pulling back from the battle, no longer willing to press the attack without their dreadnoughts' overwhelming firepower to support them. Within 20 minutes, the last of the invasion fleet had withdrawn entirely, fleeing back across the border into the darkness beyond Concord space. The Meridian Gate had held. As the immediate danger passed, reports began flooding in from across the battle line. Losses had been significant, 4 Concord ships destroyed and several more badly damaged, but the defense had ultimately succeeded, and the heart of Concord space remained safe from the massive Korath invasion force. Fleet Captain Dask's voice came over the comm, filled with genuine gratitude. "Captain Voss, I don't think this battle would have ended the way it did without your ship and your crew. That tactic you devised, using manual coordination to bring down the dreadnought's shields, that's going to be studied by fleet strategists for years to come." "We couldn't have done it without the whole formation working together, Fleet Captain," Voss said. "Every ship that trusted the plan and switched to manual targeting made this victory possible." "Perhaps," Dask said, "but it was your ship's crew and their experience with exactly this kind of hands-on precision that made the plan possible in the first place. I have a feeling the council back home is going to have some very interesting things to discuss after today." As the Valkyrie's wrath drifted amid the debris of the battle, its crew exhausted but triumphant, Captain Voss allowed herself a rare moment of quiet reflection, staring out at the stars beyond the view screen. Whatever came next, whatever the council ultimately decided about the future of Terran ships within the Concord fleet, one thing was now beyond any doubt. On this day, above the Meridian Gate, an old battleship that had been declared obsolete only weeks earlier had helped save an entire sector of Concord space, breaking every expectation anyone had ever placed upon it. News of the Battle of the Meridian Gate spread quickly across Concord space, carried by every news network and official report, within days of the fighting's end. The story captured the attention of citizens across dozens of species, not just because of the scale of the victory, but because of the unlikely hero at the center of it all. An old Terran battleship the Council had declared obsolete, only weeks before the battle began. At Concord Fleet Command Headquarters, Admiral Vex found himself fielding an overwhelming number of requests, from journalists wanting interviews with Captain Voss, to fleet strategists wanting detailed reports on the manual targeting tactic that had brought down the Korath dreadnought, to Council delegates suddenly eager to revisit a decision they had made with such confidence only a short time earlier. Ambassador Rosalind Chen sat once again in her chair within the Great Council chamber, though this time the mood in the room was very different from the day the vote on Terran ships had passed. Director Senek Vorel stood at the center of the chamber, his usual calm composure noticeably shaken as he addressed the assembled delegates. "Honored delegates," Vorel began, "we gather today to reconsider a decision made in haste, based on incomplete understanding. The Battle of the Meridian Gate has demonstrated, beyond any reasonable doubt, that raw technological specifications alone do not determine a warship's true value in combat. The Terran Federation ship Valkyrie's Wrath, a vessel this council declared obsolete, played a decisive role in defeating what could have been a catastrophic invasion of Concord space." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber, a stark contrast to the near-unanimous vote that had passed weeks earlier. Ambassador Chen rose to speak, her expression calm but firm. "Director Vorel, honored delegates, I do not say this to gloat, though I confess the temptation is there. I say this because it matters for the future safety of every species within this Concord. Terran ships are built differently from many of yours. Our engineers favor systems that can be repaired and adjusted by hand, in the field, without waiting for specialized parts or automated diagnostics. Our crews train extensively in manual operation of every system aboard their ships, not merely how to instruct a computer. These are not weaknesses, honored delegates. As we have just seen, in the right circumstances, they can be exactly the strengths that win a battle a purely automated fleet cannot." Director Vorel nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "The Council recognizes the validity of this position, Ambassador. I move that we formally reverse the decision to decommission Terran-class battleships. Furthermore, I propose that the Concord fleet begin a program of cooperative development, combining the strengths of Zenithian technology with the proven combat doctrine developed by Terran engineers and crews. The vote that followed was almost unanimous, a dramatic reversal from the decision made only weeks before. Terran ships would remain in active Concord service, and more than that, their unique combat philosophy would be studied and, where appropriate, incorporated into future fleet designs across every member species. Aboard the Valkyrie's Wrath, still undergoing repairs at a Concord shipyard following the battle, news of the Council's reversal reached the crew during a quiet evening meal in the mess hall. Lieutenant Sharma, who had been monitoring official Concord news channels, burst into the room with the announcement, and the mess hall erupted into cheers and applause. Captain Voss, seated at her usual table near the back of the room, allowed herself a genuine smile as she listened to her crew celebrate. Commander Reyes raised a glass in her direction. "Well, Captain, looks like this old ship isn't going to the scrapyard after all." "Looks that way," Voss agreed, though her tone remained characteristically measured. "Though I imagine it's going to take more than one battle to fully change some minds back at Fleet Command." "Maybe," Chief Okafor said, settling into a nearby seat with her own tray of food. "But it's a start, and honestly, Captain, I don't think anyone who was out there at the Meridian Gate is ever going to look at this ship, or this crew, the same way again." Zeth Khan, seated across the table, raised his own cup in a gesture he had picked up from observing the human crew over the past several months. "I would like to make a toast, if I may." "Go ahead, Zeth," Voss said, curious. "When I first came aboard this ship," Zeth began, "I believed I understood what made a warship strong. Powerful engines, advanced weapons, cutting-edge shields. These were the things I had been taught to value above all else. I have learned, during my time here, that these things matter, but they are not everything. A ship is only as strong as the people who serve aboard her, their skill, their courage, and their willingness to trust one another completely, even when the odds seem impossible. I have never, in all my years of training and service, seen a crew like this one. To the Valkyrie's Wrath, and to the finest crew I have ever had the honor to serve alongside." The mess hall fell quiet for a moment, moved by the young Sonari's heartfelt words, before erupting once more into cheers and the clinking of cups raised in celebration. Later that evening, after most of the crew had retired for the night, Captain Voss found herself walking alone through the ship's quiet corridors, running her hand along the familiar metal walls that had been her home for so many years. She made her way down to engineering, where she found Chief Okafor still awake, performing one last check on the repairs before turning in for the night. "Can't sleep either, Chief?" Voss asked, stepping into the engineering bay. Okafor looked up and smiled tiredly. "Guess I just wanted to make sure she's really all right, after everything we put her through out there." Voss walked over, placing her own hand against the worn metal of the ship's central support column. She held together, just like she always has. 19 years of service, Okafor said quietly, and they wanted to throw her away, because some committee decided a chart said she wasn't good enough anymore. "They know better now," Voss said. Okafor nodded slowly. "Yeah, I suppose they do." The two women stood together in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the familiar hum of the ship's systems around them. Systems that Okafor had personally maintained and repaired, more times than either of them could easily count. "You know," Okafor said eventually, "I've served on this ship since I was 26 years old, watched 3 different captains come and go before you took command, seen this crew through storms, through battles, through quiet stretches so boring we thought we might lose our minds from the monotony. Through it all, this ship never once let us down." "No," Voss agreed, "she never did." "Makes you wonder," Okafor continued, "what exactly those Concord engineers were measuring when they decided to call her obsolete. Because from where I'm standing, everything that actually matters, this old girl has in spades." Voss smiled, patting the wall gently before turning to leave. "Get some rest, Chief. We've earned it." "Aye, Captain," Okafor said, though she lingered a moment longer, giving the engine core one last affectionate look before finally heading toward her own quarters. 3 weeks later, the Valkyrie's Wrath, freshly repaired and fitted with several new upgrades developed through the Concord's new cooperative technology program, departed the shipyard on a fresh assignment, no longer relegated to a forgotten patrol route in the Rimward Drift, but assigned instead to a position of honor along the newly reinforced Meridian Gate defense line. Standing on the bridge as the ship pulled away from the shipyard, Captain Voss looked out at the stars ahead. Her crew gathered around her at their familiar stations. Commander Reyes stood at her side. Lieutenant Sharma monitored the communication channels. Lieutenant Illick guided the ship smoothly through the shipyard's traffic lanes, and Lieutenant Kim ran through her weapons checks with the same careful precision she always did. Zeth Khan, who had requested and received permission to remain aboard the ship permanently as a liaison officer rather than returning to Sonari space after completing his original assignment, stood near the back of the bridge, watching the crew with quiet admiration. "Course laid in for the Meridian Gate, Captain," Illick reported. "Take us out, Lieutenant," Voss said. As the Valkyrie's Wrath moved smoothly out into open space, its familiar gray hull now bearing a few new markings, recognizing its role in the historic battle, Captain Voss allowed herself a moment to reflect on everything that had happened since that day in the council chamber, when her ship had been declared obsolete. They had been dismissed, humiliated, and sent away to a forgotten corner of Concord space, expected by many to simply fade quietly into retirement. Instead, this crew, aboard this old, proven ship, had answered a distress call no one else could reach in time, had scouted the greatest threat Concord space had faced in decades, and had ultimately played the decisive role in a battle that would be remembered and studied for generations to come. "Captain," Reyes said quietly, standing beside her, "for what it's worth, I don't think any of us will ever forget what this ship and this crew accomplished these past few weeks." "Neither will I, Marcus," Voss said. "Neither will I." Behind them, the shipyard grew smaller in the distance, and ahead, the vast expanse of space stretched out before the Valkyrie's Wrath, filled with new challenges, new missions, and new opportunities to prove, once again, that true strength was never simply a matter of numbers on a chart. The Council had once called this ship obsolete. Now, across every corner of Concord space, from the grandest core worlds to the smallest border colonies, people spoke of the Valkyrie's Wrath and its crew with a very different word entirely: legend. And as the old battleship sailed on toward its next mission, its crew standing ready at their posts, proud and unbroken, it was clear to everyone who had witnessed what they had accomplished that this was not the end of their story. It was only the beginning of a new one, written by a crew who had refused to let anyone, not even an entire galactic council, decide their worth for them. The stars stretched endlessly ahead, and the Valkyrie's Wrath, faster and stronger for everything it had endured, sailed onward into whatever came next, ready as always to break every record anyone dared to set for it. A few hours into the journey toward the Meridian Gate, Captain Voss retired briefly to her quarters to review the latest reports from Fleet Command. Among the usual updates on fleet movements and supply schedules, one message caught her attention immediately. It was from Admiral Vex, marked personal rather than official. She opened it and read carefully. The Admiral had written not as a superior officer issuing orders, but almost as a friend sharing good news. He explained that the Council's new cooperative technology program had already produced its first results: a hybrid engine design combining the raw power of the Zenithian drive with the resilience and field-repairable structure of traditional Terran engineering. Early tests, he wrote, showed remarkable promise, and he credited the breakthrough directly to the lessons learned from the Valkyrie's Wrath's performance at the Meridian Gate. He closed the message with a simple line that made Voss smile as she read it. "You did more than save a sector, Captain. You changed how this entire Concord thinks about strength. Well done." Voss set the datapad down and leaned back in her chair, allowing herself a rare moment of quiet satisfaction. She thought of Ambassador Chen, standing alone in that council chamber weeks ago, asking a question no one had wanted to answer honestly. She thought of the long, humiliating journey out to Sector K-19, a crew sent away to be forgotten. She thought of Kepler Mining Station 9, of Station Master Delgado's trembling voice filled with relief, of the dangerous scouting mission into the Ashvale Expanse, of the desperate chase through the Kestrel Nebula's debris field, and finally, of the massive dreadnought breaking apart above the Meridian Gate under 6 precisely coordinated strikes. None of it had been easy. None of it had been guaranteed. But every step of the way, this crew had chosen to do what was right. Not because a council or a chart told them their ship still mattered, but because they knew, in their hearts, that it always had. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," she called. Lieutenant Illick stepped inside, looking slightly nervous, which was unusual for the normally confident young pilot. "Captain, sorry to bother you. I just wanted to say something, if that's all right." "Go ahead, Tomas." "When I first got assigned to this ship, 5 years ago, I'll be honest, I was a little disappointed. I'd hoped for something newer, something with all the latest systems. I thought flying an older ship like this meant I wouldn't get to show what I could really do." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "I was wrong. Flying this ship taught me more about real piloting than any simulator ever could. I just wanted to thank you, Captain, for giving me the chance to learn that." Voss smiled warmly. "The thanks belong to you too, Lieutenant. Skill like yours doesn't come from luck, it comes from hard work, and from caring enough to get better every single day. This ship gave you the opportunity, but you're the one who earned every bit of what you can do." Illick nodded, looking pleased, and excused himself to return to his post. Voss remained alone for a few more minutes, gathering her thoughts, before rising and making her way back toward the bridge. Back on the bridge, the atmosphere was calm and steady, the familiar rhythm of a well-trained crew going about their duties with quiet confidence. Voss took her seat in the command chair, watching the stars glide past on the main view screen. "Captain," Sharma said, "incoming transmission from Ambassador Chen. She's requesting to speak with you directly, whenever you have a moment." "Put her through," Voss said, curious. The screen flickered, and the familiar, composed face of Ambassador Chen appeared. "Captain Voss, I wanted to reach out personally, before you got too far into your new assignment. I know Admiral Vex has already shared much of the good news, but I felt this deserved a direct word from me as well." "Ambassador," Voss said, "I appreciate that, and I want to thank you for standing up for this ship and this crew back in that council chamber, even when the vote had already gone against us." Chen shook her head slightly. "I only spoke the truth, Captain. You and your crew did the rest, out there in the dark, where it actually mattered. I simply wanted you to know that your actions have done more for humanity's standing within this Concord than a decade of speeches from ambassadors like myself ever could." "We were just doing our jobs, Ambassador," Voss said simply. "Perhaps," Chen said, a small smile crossing her face, "but sometimes doing one's job, done well enough, done with enough heart, changes the way an entire galaxy sees an entire people. I suspect you and your crew are only getting started, Captain. I look forward to seeing what comes next." "So do I, Ambassador," Voss said. "So do I." As the transmission ended, Voss looked around at her bridge crew once more, each of them focused on their duties, steady and capable, exactly the kind of people who had turned an old, supposedly obsolete battleship into a legend across Concord space. Outside, the stars continued their endless, silent journey, and somewhere ahead, new challenges waited, new dangers, new chances to prove that the true measure of any ship, or any crew, was never found on a chart, or in a committee's careful calculations. It was found in the courage to answer a distress call no one else could reach, in the skill to outfly and outfight opponents who believed themselves superior, and in the simple, stubborn refusal to ever give up, no matter what the odds. The Valkyrie's Wrath sailed on, carrying its crew toward whatever the future held, ready, as it always had been, to meet it head-on. Months later, long after the Battle of the Meridian Gate had passed from breaking news into settled history, a small ceremony was held at the newly reinforced Meridian Gate station, marking the first anniversary of the battle that had nearly changed the course of Concord history. Representatives from across the Concord gathered to honor the ships and crews who had defended the gate that day, and the Valkyrie's Wrath, still commanded by Captain Elena Voss, was given a place of honor at the center of the ceremony. Admiral Vex, now serving as a permanent liaison between Fleet Command and the new Cooperative Technology Program, spoke at length about the lessons the entire Concord had learned from that day. Lessons that had already led to significant changes in how new ships were designed, and how crews were trained across a dozen different member species. He spoke of resilience, of trust between crew and commander, and of the danger of measuring worth by numbers alone rather than by proven results. When it came time for Captain Voss to speak, she kept her remarks simple, in keeping with her nature. She spoke not of glory or of records broken, but of her crew, each of whom she named individually, praising their skill, their courage, and their unwavering dedication to doing what was right, even when the cost seemed high and the odds seemed impossible. "This ship," she said, gesturing to the Valkyrie's Wrath resting quietly in its berth beside the station, "was once called Obsolete by people who looked only at numbers on a page. But a ship is never just metal and wiring. It is the people who serve aboard her, who trust each other with their lives, who refuse to give up even when everything seems stacked against them. That is what this crew taught this entire Concorde, and that is a lesson I hope none of us ever forget." The crowd's applause echoed across the newly rebuilt station, and as the ceremony concluded, Captain Voss found herself once again standing quietly beside Chief Engineer Amara Okafor, both women looking out at the ship that had carried them through so much. "Feels strange, doesn't it?" Okafor said. "Being called heroes after they tried to send us off to be scrapped." "A little," Voss admitted, "though I think I prefer being underestimated. Keeps everyone honest about what actually matters." Okafor chuckled softly. "Can't argue with that, Captain." Nearby, Zeth Khan stood in quiet conversation with a group of young Sonari engineers who had traveled to the ceremony specifically to study the Valkyrie's Wrath's unique design philosophy firsthand. He answered their questions patiently, explaining concepts that had once seemed strange and inefficient to him, but that he now understood as the very foundation of the crew's remarkable success. Lieutenant Kim stood with Fleet Captain Dask, the two swapping stories from the battle, with the easy familiarity of comrades who had faced death together and come through the other side. Lieutenant Sharma and Lieutenant Illick mingled among the crowd, answering questions from curious reporters, eager to hear first-hand accounts of the historic engagement. As the sun of the nearby star cast long shadows across the station's observation deck, Captain Voss allowed herself one final look at her ship, resting peacefully in its berth, its gray hull bearing the honorable scars of battles fought and won. It was not the newest ship in the Concorde fleet, nor the fastest, nor the most heavily armed. But it was, without question, one of the most trusted, and its crew, once dismissed as flying an outdated relic, had proven beyond any doubt that true strength came not from the numbers stamped on a technical specification sheet, but from the hearts and skill of the people who served aboard her. The Valkyrie's Wrath would fly many more missions in the years that followed, facing new dangers and new challenges across the vast reaches of Concorde space. But nothing would ever quite match the significance of that single, defining moment when an old, forgotten battleship, and the crew who refused to let it be forgotten, changed the way an entire galaxy understood the true meaning of strength, courage, and worth. And so the legend continued, carried not in the cold numbers of a council's chart, but in the proud, steady heartbeat of every engine, every crew member, and every mission still to come.